Big Jake Sullivan had a simple code: respect those who earn it, protect those who need it, and never tolerate cruelty. He'd learned that code in Vietnam, refined it in 40 years of riding, and taught it to every member of the Riverside chapter. On Tuesday, May 14th, that code would be tested in a truck stop diner off Route 66. 50 motorcycles pulled into the Chrome Valley Diner parking lot at 7:30 a.m., right on schedule. This was their bi-weekly ritual hospital charity run, then breakfast. The same booth, the same waitress, the same order Big Jake had been placing for 11 years. But today something would be different. Sarah Mitchell poured coffee with the practiced efficiency of 22 years behind a counter. At 43, she could read customers faster than most people read menus. The bikers? Easy. They wanted strong coffee, hot food, and to be left alone to decompress after visiting sick kids. The kid in the $1,100 sneakers who just walked in trouble. Sarah had started her shift at 6 a.m., same as always. 3 jobs, 4 hours of sleep, and a daughter heading to Stanford if she could scrape together $32,000. The math didn't work, but Sarah had learned long ago that the world didn't care about math. It cared about who showed up and did the work. Old Mike was already at the counter when she arrived, third stool. From the left, same as every Tuesday for the past decade. She had his coffee poured before he sat down. Black coffee, 2 eggs over easy wheat toast, no butter. The 78-year-old trucker looked up with eyes that had seen every highway in America. His weathered hands wrapped around the cup like it was the only warmth left in the world. "You're gonna make me predictable, Sarah." "You made yourself predictable, Mike. I just pay attention." She patted his shoulder affectionately, and the old man's eyes crinkled with genuine warmth. Some people came to diners for the food. Some came because they didn't want to eat alone. Old Mike came because Sarah remembered him. The Hendersons arrived next, sliding into booth 4 with the synchronized movement of 42 years of marriage. Mr. Henderson still held the door for his wife. Mrs. Henderson still touched his arm when she laughed. They ordered the same breakfast they'd been ordering since Sarah started working here, and she loved them for it. Martha Rodriguez pushed through the door at 6:45, her nurse's scrubs rumpled from a night shift at County General. She collapsed into a booth near the window, exhaustion written in every line of her body. Sarah brought coffee without being asked. Extra cheese on the scrambled eggs because Martha deserved something indulgent after 12 hours of saving lives. The morning rush built slowly, predictably. Truck drivers grabbing breakfast before their haul. Construction workers fueling up before the job site. A family passing through on their way to somewhere else, the kids sticky with sleep and restlessness. Sarah moved between tables like a dancer who'd memorized every step. A family with a fussy toddler got crayons and a coloring page without asking. A businessman in a hurry got his check the moment he finished his last bite. An elderly woman eating alone got extra time and genuine conversation because Sarah understood that sometimes people came to diners not for the food, but for the feeling of not being invisible. Jose called from the kitchen window. Sarah turned to find him holding up a $20 bill, confusion and gratitude mixing on his face. "A customer left this for me. Said you did great work, wanted to make sure you got it directly." It was a lie, the kind Sarah told every week. The 20 was hers, pulled from tips she couldn't afford to give away. But Jose had 4 kiddos now, and she'd seen him putting back groceries at the checkout line last week, choosing between diapers and formula. He tucked the bill into his pocket, blinking hard. Sarah turned away before he could see that she understood exactly how much $20 could mean. At 7:42, the rumble started. Low and distant at first like approaching thunder, then growing louder until the windows of Chrome Valley Diner actually vibrated in their frames. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The family with the toddler instinctively pulled their child closer. 50 motorcycles rolled into the parking lot in a formation that spoke of military precision and brotherhood. Chrome gleamed in the morning sunlight. Leather creaked. Engines growled, and then one by one went silent. The sudden quiet felt almost louder than the noise had been. Through the diner windows, the patrons watched as riders dismounted. Leather vests covered in patches, chains, bandanas, beards, tattoos that crawled up necks and down arms. The words Hell's Angels were visible on several of the vests, and the tension in the diner became thick enough to cut. A businessman at table 7 quietly asked for his check. Martha sat up straighter, her emergency room instincts kicking in. Even Mr. Henderson stopped holding his wife's hand and watched the door nervously. But Sarah Mitchell didn't even look up from pouring coffee. They're regulars. Come in every other Tuesday morning. Tip better than anyone. Old Mike nodded in agreement, his voice carrying across the diner with the authority of age and experience. Best behaved customers we got, actually. The bell above the door chimed and they came in. 50 men and women in leather filling the diner with presents. The leader, a man who stood 6'4" with a gray beard that reached his chest, removed his sunglasses and scanned the room. His eyes, surprisingly gentle for someone who looked like he could break a man in half, landed on Sarah. Morning, Sarah. His voice was a deep rumble that somehow sounded like a hug. Morning, Big Jake. Usual spot. You know it. These weren't the bikers the media warned you about. This was the Riverside chapter of a motorcycle club that had spent the last 15 years proving that brotherhood could mean something beautiful. Big Jake Sullivan, the chapter president, had founded their charity division after his daughter Melissa had been treated for leukemia at Children's Hospital. She'd survived barely, and Jake had made it his life's mission to make sure other kids had the same chance. Every other Tuesday, the chapter did their hospital charity ride visiting sick children, delivering toys and donations, being gentle giants in pediatric wards where hope sometimes felt scarce. And every other Tuesday, they stopped at Chrome Valley Diner because Sarah had once given Jake a free meal when he'd been broken down on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck without enough cash on him. He'd never forgotten that kindness. Rita Sullivan, Jake's wife of 32 years, was right behind him, her gray hair in a long braid down her back. She'd been riding her own bike since before most of the men in the chapter were born, and she ran the charity operations with the efficiency of a Fortune 500 CEO. She made a beeline for Sarah and hugged her like family. How's Emma doing with those college applications? She got into Stanford. Pride lit up Sarah's tired face like sunrise. Stanford, Sarah, that's incredible. Rita's excitement was genuine, loud enough that several of the bikers overheard and called out congratulations. The nervous atmosphere in the diner shifted. The businessman at table 7 relaxed enough to actually eat his eggs. The Hendersons went back to holding hands. This wasn't an invasion. It was a reunion. Sarah worked the tables, taking orders from men with names like Tiny Bear and Razor, who ordered pancakes and said, "Please," and "Thank you, ma'am," with more politeness than half the white-collar customers she served. They asked about her kids by name. They told her about the 11-year-old boy they'd just visited who was beating lymphoma. They showed her photos on their phones of their own grandchildren. Their code was simple but absolute: respect those who deserve it, protect those who need it, and never ever tolerate cruelty. But today their code would be tested in a way they'd never forget. Big Jake sat in the large corner booth that could fit 8 of his crew, sipping coffee and listening to Bear tell a story about his granddaughter's soccer game. But his attention wasn't fully on the conversation. He was watching the parking lot through the window, his instincts tuned to potential trouble, the way a career rider's instincts always were. That's when he saw it. A black Mercedes C-Class pulling into the parking lot, driving too fast, taking up 2 spaces. The car was pristine, expensive, ostentatious. The license plate made Big Jake's jaw tighten involuntarily. Dat kid. He'd seen plates like that before. Vanity plates that announced privilege like a warning label. The driver's side door opened and a teenager stepped out, designer sneakers hitting the pavement like he owned it. 2 friends followed all of them, looking at their phones, laughing too loud, moving with the confidence of people who'd never faced a single consequence. Big Jake set down his coffee cup slowly. Something in his gut twisted. Rita noticed the change in his posture, immediately followed his gaze out the window, and her expression shifted too. Jake. Her voice was quiet, cautious. Just watching. But his hands, scarred from decades of riding and working and living, had formed loose fists on the table. The bell above the diner door chimed again, and everything changed. Tyler Ashford III was wearing $3,400 on his body when he walked through the door of Chrome Valley Diner. The Balenciaga Triple S sneakers alone cost $1,100. The distressed Amiri jeans, another $800. His Supreme Box logo hoodie, $600 for a piece of cotton that was deliberately made to look worn. The Rolex Submariner on his wrist, his 17th birthday gift from his father, another $900, though the real one cost $40,000. Tyler wore the replica because he had already lost 2 genuine Rolexes and his father had finally put his foot down. Behind him came his two friends, Devin and Marcus, both holding their phones horizontally, already recording. They were content creators, or at least that's what they called themselves. Their specialty was social experiments that weren't experiments at all, just exercises in humiliation disguised as entertainment. Tyler had 17 million followers across his platforms. 17 million people who watched him prank unsuspecting workers, mock people in public, and generally treat the world like his personal playground. His most viral video, the one that had gained him 6 million followers in a single week, showed him leaving a one-penny tip on a $300 bill and filming the server's reaction. By tonight, he'd lose 6 million of them. The warm atmosphere of Chrome Valley Diner shifted the moment Tyler entered. It was like someone had opened a door and let cold air rush in. His voice carried across the space, loud and performative, everything calculated for the cameras his friends were operating. Yeah, this place is literally so vintage. Like, are we in a time machine? Do they even have Wi-Fi here? He laughed at his own joke, a sound without genuine humor. The diner had gone quiet again, but this was a different kind of quiet than when the bikers arrived. This was the uncomfortable silence of people recognizing trouble. Tyler scanned the diner with entitled eyes, walking past several open tables until he zeroed in on the best booth, the large corner one with the window view. The fact that it was currently occupied by Big Jake and 7 members of his crew didn't seem to register as an obstacle. "Excuse me, we need this booth. It has the best lighting for content." Big Jake looked up slowly from his coffee. The temperature in his eyes could have frozen gasoline, but his voice remained calm, measured. "Booth's occupied, son. Plenty of other seats." Tyler's face flickered with surprise. He clearly wasn't used to being told no. "Do you know who I am?" "Can't say that I do. Can't say that I care." For a moment, Tyler looked like he might push the issue. Devin and Marcus had their phones trained on the interaction, hoping for confrontation. But something in Big Jake's absolute stillness made Tyler reconsider. He wasn't used to reading dangerous men, but some instinct for self-preservation finally kicked in. "Whatever, this place is probably garbage anyway." The words were muttered loud enough to be heard, designed to save face. Tyler turned away to find another booth, choosing one in Sarah's section. Of course he did. Sarah approached with the same professional warmth. She gave everyone her order pad ready, her smile in place despite the exhaustion that lived in her bones. She had no idea who Tyler Ashford was. Didn't know about his 17 million followers. Didn't know about his specialty in humiliation content. Didn't know that he'd actually called his father on the drive over, bragging about how he was going to destroy some random waitress for views. "Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to Chrome Valley. Can I start you off with some coffee?" Tyler looked up at her, and his eyes did a quick calculation. Middle-aged, tired, obviously working class. Perfect target. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, we'll take coffee, but I have very specific requirements, and I need you to pay attention because I don't like repeating myself." In the corner booth, Big Jake's attention had shifted entirely to Sarah's section. Rita touched his arm gently, a silent communication between people who'd been married for 3 decades. The entire crew had stopped their conversations. 50 pairs of eyes were now watching a 17-year-old kid who had no idea he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Old Mike, still sitting at the counter, muttered into his coffee cup, "Here we go." He was right. Tyler's order started simply enough, or so Sarah thought. "I'll have the breakfast burger, but I need you to get this exactly right because I'm very particular about my food." Sarah's pen was poised over her order pad, her professional smile still in place. "Of course, how would you like that cooked?" "Medium rare, but not regular medium rare. I need the internal temperature to be exactly 135 degrees. Not 130, not 140, 135. Can you handle that?" Sarah had been waitressing for 22 years. She'd handled far more complicated requests than temperature specifications. "I'll make sure the kitchen knows. And the cheese needs to be white cheddar, melted but not runny, and I want it added exactly 90 seconds before the burger comes off the grill. The bun needs to be toasted on the inside, only not the outside, because I hate when the outside gets too crunchy. You're getting all this?" Sarah wrote quickly, nodding. "White cheddar melted, not runny, added 90 seconds before done. Bun toasted, inside only. The lettuce needs to be iceberg, not romaine. And it has to be cold, like actually cold. And tomatoes, but only the center slices." No end pieces because those are disgusting. Onions raw but soaked in ice water first to take the bite out. Pickles on the side, not on the burger. Fries need to be extra crispy, almost burnt but not quite. And I want them seasoned with sea salt, not regular salt. Regular salt is for poor people. Devin and Marcus had their phones trained on Sarah's face, capturing every moment of what they knew was coming. This was Tyler's patterns: make impossible demands, set the worker up for failure, then unleash humiliation when they inevitably couldn't meet his absurd specifications. Sarah finished, writing, her hand cramping slightly. I've got all that. Anything to drink besides coffee. Tyler's voice had an edge, now the first hint of the cruelty to come. Did I say I was done? I apologize. Please continue. I also need you to make sure the cook washes his hands before touching my food. I don't know who works in your kitchen, but hygiene is important to me. The insult was barely veiled. Sarah's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, but she maintained her composure. Our kitchen maintains the highest health standards, sir. I'll get this order in for you right away. She walked toward the kitchen, her back straight, despite the exhaustion that wanted to make her shoulders slump. Sarah had dealt with difficult customers before, but she felt something different in the air today. A kind of electric tension that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. At the corner booth, Big Jake made a small hand gesture to his crew, just two fingers pointed down. The signal was clear: stand down, watch for now. Coffee cups were pushed aside. 50 bikers shifted their attention entirely to Sarah's section, their body language subtle but unmistakable to anyone who knew how to read it. Rita leaned close to her husband, her voice barely a whisper. Jake, that's a child. That's a bully. Age doesn't change what you are. Jose, the line cook, took Sarah's order with a concerned frown, reading the impossible specifications with growing irritation. This is ridiculous. You want me to tell them we can't do this? No, just do your best. I need this job, Jose. I can't make waves. She remembered Emma's college letter sitting on her kitchen counter. $32,000. She remembered the stack of bills. She remembered that she was one complaint away from possibly losing this job, and she had 3 kids who depended on her. So Sarah Mitchell did what she'd been doing her entire life. She swallowed her pride and endured. The burger came out 12 minutes later. Jose had done his best to meet every specification, his pride as a cook demanding nothing less than perfection, even for a customer who didn't deserve it. Sarah carried it to Tyler's table with the same professional warmth, setting it down carefully. One breakfast burger prepared to your specifications. Tyler didn't even look at her. He pulled out his phone, took several photos of the burger from different angles, then picked it up and took a bite. His face immediately twisted into exaggerated disgust, the expression so theatrical it belonged on a stage. This is wrong. This is completely wrong. The temperature is off, I can tell just by tasting it. And this cheese is definitely runny. I specifically said not runny. Are you stupid? Did you not write down what I said? Sarah's smile wavered, the first crack in her professional armor. Sir, I wrote down every detail you gave me. The kitchen prepared it exactly as you requested. Then your kitchen is incompetent. Take it back. Make it again. And this time actually pay attention. The diner had gone completely quiet. The Hendersons looked at each other uncomfortably. Old Mike's hands tightened around his coffee cup until his knuckles went white. Martha, the nurse, looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. This was the terrible social contract of watching someone be abused in public. Everyone knew it was wrong, but nobody wanted to get involved, except for 50 people who had a very different code. Sarah took the plate back without argument, even though she could see that Jose had executed the order perfectly. The burger was exactly medium rare. The cheese was melted but not runny. But arguing would only make things worse. The second burger came out 10 minutes later, Jose's hands shaking with barely controlled anger as he plated it. Tyler took one bite and pushed the plate away, dramatically playing to the cameras his friends held steady. Nope, still wrong. The fries aren't crispy enough, and I can taste regular salt. I said sea salt. Do they hire anyone with a brain here, or is it just you? Devin snickered behind his phone. Marcus zoomed in on Sarah's face, trying to capture the moment her composure cracked. Sir, I'm very sorry. Let me have them make it one more time. Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the plate. The tremor was small, almost invisible, But Big Jake saw it from across the diner. One more time, you've already wasted 20 minutes of my life. Do you have any idea who I am? I have 17 million followers. I could destroy this place with one post. Maybe I should. Maybe people need to know that Chrome Valley Diner employs incompetent waitresses who can't follow simple instructions. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, a hairline fracture in the armor she'd spent 22 years building. But she didn't let it show on her face. She thought about Emma, about Marcus's inhaler, about the electric bill that was already past due. I'll get you another burger, sir. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. As she walked back toward the kitchen for the third time, old Mike finally spoke up. His voice carried the weight of 78 years of watching the world get meaner. Son, that waitress has served this community for 20 years. She deserves your respect. Tyler turned to the old man with a sneer that transformed his face into something ugly. Mind your business, Grandpa. This is between me and the help. The help. That word hung in the air like poison, like a slap, like every insult working people had swallowed for generations. In the corner booth, Big Jake's jaw clenched so hard Rita could hear his teeth grinding. His hands resting on the table had formed fists. Around him, his crew sat in absolute stillness, the kind of stillness that comes before violence, the kind of quiet that promises thunder. But Jake's signal remained stand down watch. Not yet. The third burger came out. Jose had cooked it with shaking hands, angry on Sarah's behalf, but helpless to do anything about it. He'd wanted to spit in it, to poison it, to do something that would make this entitled kid understand what consequences felt like. But he didn't, because Sarah needed this job and he wouldn't be the reason she lost it. Sarah delivered it with an apology already forming on her lips, her professional mask still in place, even though it was cracking at the edges like old paint. Tyler didn't even taste it this time. He just looked at Sarah with cold, calculating eyes. The eyes of someone who'd spent 17 years learning that cruelty without consequence was the same as permission. You know what? I don't even want this anymore. Your service has been so terrible that you've ruined my appetite. He leaned back in the booth, spreading his arms across the top of the seat like a king on a throne. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to stand there and apologize for being incompetent. And you're going to mean it. And my friends are going to record it. And then maybe I won't completely destroy your pathetic diner on social media. The third burger sat on the table between them, steam still rising from the perfectly cooked meat that would never be eaten wasted like everything else Tyler touched. Sarah stood there, order pad still in her hand, and for the first time in the entire encounter, tears formed in her eyes. Not from anger, not even from the humiliation, but from the weight of everything. 22 years of serving people who sometimes treated her like she wasn't human. 4 hours of sleep, bills she couldn't pay, dreams she couldn't afford. And now this boy, this child who'd never struggled a day in his life, telling her she was nobody. Sarah had been hungry, she'd been exhausted, she'd been desperate. But never in 43 years had she felt so small, so invisible, so utterly worthless. Tyler saw the tears forming and smiled. This was exactly what he wanted, the moment of breaking the visible crack in someone's dignity, the proof that he had power over another human being. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more cruel than his shouting had been. You want to know what you are? You're entertainment. You're content. You're nothing but a prop in my life. And then he did it. Tyler Ashford III gathered saliva in his mouth and spit directly into Sarah Mitchell's face. Time seemed to fracture. The world slowed down like a car crash, like a heart attack, like every moment that divides before from after. The spit hit her left cheek just below her eye and began to slide down slowly. Sarah's entire body went rigid, locked in place by shock and humiliation. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The order pad slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. The Chrome Valley Diner, which moments before had been filled with the ambient noise of breakfast service, the clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, the sizzle from the kitchen, became absolutely silent. Not quiet, silent, as if the entire world had taken a collective breath and forgotten to exhale. Tyler threw his head back and laughed. The sound was ugly, performative, designed for the cameras. He high-fived Devin, then Marcus, both of them laughing too, phone still recording, capturing Sarah's humiliation in high definition for 17 million followers to eventually see. Did you get that? Did you get her face? Tyler's voice was triumphant, proud of what he'd done already, imagining the views, the comments, the validation from an audience that had learned to mistake cruelty for entertainment. But he wasn't looking at the right faces. He wasn't seeing what mattered. He wasn't seeing old Mike stand up at the counter, his 78-year-old hands shaking with a rage that transcended words. He wasn't seeing Martha pull out her phone to call the police, her nurse's training the only thing keeping her hands steady. He wasn't seeing Mr. and Mrs. Henderson clutching each other's hands so tightly their knuckles had gone white. He wasn't seeing Jose burst through the kitchen door only to be held back by another cook who knew this situation was about to escalate beyond anything they could control. And he definitely wasn't seeing what was happening in the corner booth. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then 50 chairs scraped backwards simultaneously. The sound was like thunder, like judgment, like the earth itself shifting beneath Tyler's feet. It was the sound of a code being activated, of a promise being kept, of justice preparing to be served. 50 men and women in leather stood as one unit, their movements synchronized not through planning, but through shared code, shared outrage, shared purpose. This was what brotherhood looked like when it mattered. This was what it meant to protect those who needed it. Big Jake Sullivan rose last, his 6'4" frame unfolding with deliberate slowness. His face had transformed into something that would haunt Tyler's nightmares for years to come. Not rage exactly, though rage was there. Something deeper, something more dangerous. Righteous purpose. What Tyler didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Big Jake's daughter Melissa hadn't actually survived her leukemia in the end. The cancer had gone into remission, yes, and she'd lived 6 beautiful years after treatment. But 2 years ago, at 19 years old, Melissa Sullivan had taken her own life. The reason was simple and devastating: a viral video. A boy at her college had filmed her having a panic attack, posted it online with cruel commentary, and within 48 hours, Melissa had become a meme. Millions of people had laughed at her worst moment. The humiliation had been too much for her to bear. Big Jake had found her body. He'd held her while she was still warm, while part of his mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. He'd read her suicide note, every word seared into his memory like a brand. I can't live in a world where cruelty is entertainment, where my suffering is content, where I'm nothing but a prop in someone else's bid for online fame. He'd sworn at her funeral with Rita sobbing beside him and his entire chapter as witnesses that he would never let it happen again. That if he ever saw someone being humiliated for entertainment, he would intervene, no matter what, no matter who. No matter the K-Tamam. Tyler Ashford had just given Big Jake a purpose for the first time since his daughter's death. Sarah stood frozen, spit still sliding down her cheek, tears now flowing freely. Her body shook with the kind of humiliation that scars souls, that changes people, that makes them question whether they matter at all in a world that seems designed to prove they don't. She didn't see the biker standing, didn't see the entire diner transformed into a courtroom where judgment was about to be passed. All she could feel was the wetness on her face and the words echoing in her mind, "You're nobody." But she was about to learn something that would change her life forever. In that diner at that moment, Sarah Mitchell was everybody. She was every person who had ever been disrespected, every worker who'd been abused, every human being who'd been told they didn't matter. And 50 people were about to make sure Tyler Ashford understood exactly how wrong he was. Big Jake Sullivan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. When a man who stands 6'4" and weighs 240 pounds of muscle and scar tissue rises to his full height, silence speaks louder than any threat ever could. Behind him, 49 others stood in perfect unison, a wall of leather and conviction of shared values and unbreakable bonds. The sound of their boots on the black and white checkered linoleum was rhythmic, deliberate, like a heartbeat or a war drum. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. They moved as one organism with a single purpose, closing the distance between the corner booth and Tyler's table. Tyler's laughter died in his throat. The smile that had been plastered across his face, that cruel, triumphant expression, began to falter. He looked around at Devin and Marcus, but his friends had lowered their phones slightly, their own smiles fading as they realized that something had fundamentally shifted in the room. The air pressure had changed. The temperature had dropped. Reality was reasserting itself after 17 years of being held at bay by money and privilege in the delusion that consequences were for other people. What What's your problem, old man? Tyler's voice cracked slightly, the bravado leaking out like air from a punctured tire. Big Jake stopped 3 feet from Tyler's table. Up close, the difference was even more stark. Tyler, for all his designer clothes and expensive accessories, looked exactly like what he was a boy playing at being powerful, wearing a costume of confidence that didn't fit. Jake, with his weathered face and eyes that had seen things Tyler couldn't imagine, combat loss, real suffering, was power itself. The kind that didn't need to announce itself, didn't need to perform, didn't need validation from millions of strangers online. When Jake finally spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. The kind of quiet that makes people lean in to listen because they know something important is being said. Young man, we're going to have a conversation outside. It wasn't a question, it wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact delivered with the certainty of gravity or sunrise or any other natural law that couldn't be negotiated with or avoided. Tyler tried to reclaim his courage, puffing up his chest like a threatened animal. I'm not going anywhere with you freaks. You can't touch me. My father is... I don't care who your father is. Jake interrupted, his voice still that same dangerous quiet, at each word chosen with precision and delivered with absolute conviction. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care about your followers or your videos or whatever else you think makes you important. What I care about is that you just assaulted a woman who has shown more dignity in the last 30 minutes than you've probably shown in your entire life. He paused, letting the words land, letting Tyler feel the weight of them. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand up. You're going to walk outside with us, and you're going to learn something your parents clearly never taught you. Tyler had two choices in that moment: walk out with dignity or be escorted. He chose neither, reaching instead for the only power he understood. I'm calling the police. You're threatening me. This is assault. You're all witnesses. He looked around at the other diner patrons, desperately looking for support, for someone to intervene on his behalf, for validation that he was the victim here. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke up for him. The same people who'd sat silent while he tormented Sarah now sat silent as justice prepared itself. Behind Big Jake, a biker named Thomas, called Tiny ironically because he was 6'6" and 260 pounds, crossed his arms over his chest. Next to him, a woman named Angela, who'd been riding for 30 years and had buried 2 husbands, stood with her hands on her hips. One by one, the chapter members created a corridor to the door, a pathway to accountability that Tyler would walk whether he chose to or not. Big Jake hadn't felt this kind of rage since the day he buried his daughter. It was a cold rage, the kind that didn't explode but instead calcified into purpose, into action, into the kind of justice that couldn't be bought or bargained with. Melissa's face flashed in his mind, 19 years old, brilliant and kind, destroyed by someone who thought humiliation was entertainment, who believed that other people's pain was acceptable, fuel for their own validation. He'd made a promise at her grave, and he intended to keep it. While the standoff continued, Rita Sullivan moved quietly to where Sarah still stood, frozen in shock, spit still glistening on her cheek in the harsh fluorescent light. Rita pulled a clean handkerchief from her jacket pocket, one embroidered with small flowers that Melissa had made for her mother years ago, back when the world still made sense. She gently wiped Sarah's face, her touch tender as a mother's, her eyes hard as flint. Honey, justice is coming. I need you to go in the back for a few minutes. Okay, let us handle this. Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper, small and broken. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Nobody's going to get hurt, but that boy is going to learn a lesson. I promise you that. Jose had emerged from the kitchen and gently took Sarah's arm, guiding her toward the back. She went willingly, her legs shaking her mind, unable to fully process what was happening. As she passed, an old Mike gave her an encouraging nod. Martha squeezed her hand. The Hendersons both murmured words of comfort that Sarah couldn't quite hear over the roaring in her ears. The community that had sat silent during her humiliation was finding its voice. But they understood instinctively that this wasn't their fight to fight. The bikers had claimed this moment, and there was a rightness to it that everyone felt but couldn't quite articulate. Back at Tyler's booth, Devin and Marcus had started edging toward the door, ready to abandon their friend if things got worse. Self-preservation overriding loyalty the way it always does when consequences finally arrive. Tyler noticed and felt a spike of panic that tasted like metal in his mouth. Devin, Marcus, don't just stand there, help me. But his friends were already halfway to the exit, phones forgotten no longer documenting, just escaping. Big Jake took one step closer, just one. But that single step contained within it the promise of inevitable consequence of natural law reasserting itself of the universe correcting an imbalance. Last chance to walk out on your own son. I'm trying to give you that dignity even though you didn't give it to her. But my patience has limits, and you just spent the last 30 minutes testing every one of them. Tyler looked into Big Jake's eyes and saw something that made his blood run cold. Not anger, not hatred, something worse. Disappointment. The kind of disappointment that says you've been measured and found wanting. That says you've revealed yourself to be less than human. That says there's no going back from what you've done. The entire diner held its breath. 50 bikers stood ready, and Tyler Ashford III, for the first time in his privileged life, realized that money couldn't buy him out of this moment. What happened next would change him forever. Tyler walked out of the Chrome Valley Diner flanked by 50 bikers, and the morning sunlight felt like an interrogation lamp. His legs moved mechanically, disconnected from his will, propelled by the wall of leather behind him and the certainty that refusing would only make things worse. The parking lot became an arena. Within seconds, the bikers had formed a perfect circle around him, not touching, not threatening physical violence, but creating a boundary that felt as solid as prison walls. Tyler stood in the center, his $3,400 outfit suddenly looking like a costume from a play that had just been canceled. His hands shook as he clutched his phone like a lifeline, like the only connection to a world where he still had power, where algorithms and engagement metrics mattered more than the people behind the screens. Big Jake stood directly in front of him, arms crossed over his chest. The other bikers remained silent, their presence alone, creating a pressure that made it hard for Tyler to breathe. The air felt thinner out here, reality's sharper consequences closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your father right now. Put him on speaker. Tyler's throat constricted. His father. The one person whose approval he'd been chasing his entire life. The one person who'd never quite given it, who'd always been overseas, always in meetings, always choosing work over whatever Tyler needed. I'm not calling my car. You are. Jake's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Tyler's protest die instantly, made his fingers move toward his contacts, despite every instinct screaming to run. Because this ends one of two ways. Either you take responsibility for what you just did, or we make sure the entire world knows exactly who Tyler Ashford III really is. Your choice. Tyler's hands trembled as he scrolled through his contacts past dozens of names he barely knew, people who followed him back, people who liked his posts but wouldn't answer if he called needing real help. His father's name appeared: Robert Ashford. Dad work. The parenthetical hurt more than it should have. He pressed the number. The phone rang twice before a brisk voice answered the sound of traffic in the background, the perpetual motion of a man who never stopped long enough to notice what he was leaving behind. Tyler, I'm in a meeting. Mr. Ashford, my name is Jake Sullivan. I'm here with your son in the parking lot of Chrome Valley Diner off Route 66. Your son just assaulted a woman. Silence. The kind that stretches and pulls and reveals things that words can't hide. Then Robert Ashford's voice came back different, now the businessman veneer cracking. Who is this Tyler? What's going on? Your son spit in a waitress's face while his friends filmed it for social media content. He spent 30 minutes verbally abusing this woman, calling her stupid, incompetent nobody. Then he spit on her because he thought it would be entertaining for his followers. 5 seconds of silence. Tyler could hear his father breathing, could hear the decision being made, could hear 17 years of choices crystallizing into this single moment. Put my son on the phone. Jake handed the phone back to Tyler, keeping it on speaker. The circle of bikers tightened imperceptibly. Dad, listen. Tyler, yes or no? Did you spit on someone? The question hung there like a guillotine blade. Tyler's mouth opened and closed. Devin and Marcus were in their car, now doors locked, watching through tinted windows like spectators at an execution. His silence was answer enough. Who's the man I spoke to? Put him back on. Jake took the phone, his expression unreadable. What happened next shocked everyone in that parking lot, including Jake himself. He'd braced for threats, for lawyers, for the kind of privileged outrage that money buys. Instead, he got something he hadn't expected: an ally. Mr. Sullivan, thank you. Those two words hung in the desert air like a prayer. I've been waiting for someone to teach him this lesson. Whatever you're doing, I support it. Tyler's face went white bloodless, like he'd been shot and was only now realizing it. Dad, Dad, you can't. Yes, I can. You're nearly 18, Tyler. You're about to be an adult, and adults face consequences. Robert Ashford's voice carried the weight of regrets too long postponed, of a father who'd let work consume him while his son consumed everything else. My son has spent 17 years being told he's special. His mother and I divorced over how to raise him. She wanted to keep protecting him, shielding him from every consequence, buying his way out of every problem. I wanted him to learn that actions matter, that respect is earned, not purchased. She won custody. I got overseas assignments in the illusion that I was doing the right thing by providing financially. Big Jake listened, recalibrating. This wasn't the enemy. This was another casualty of the same war. His mother died when he was 10, cancer, ovarian, 14 months from diagnosis to... Robert's voice broke just slightly, just enough. Tyler was there when she died, held her hand. I was in Singapore closing a deal. I got home 3 hours after she passed. My son faced the worst moment of his life alone because I chose work over family. Again. Jake closed his eyes briefly, thinking of Melissa, of Rita, of all the moments he'd almost missed before he learned what mattered. His grandmother, my ex-wife's mother, has raised him since. Unlimited money, zero discipline, infinite forgiveness. I've tried to reach him, Mr. Sullivan. I fly home every few months, try to set boundaries, try to teach him something. But they undermine everything I say, and then I leave again, because there's always another deal, another meeting, another excuse. The honesty was raw, unvarnished, the kind that only comes when pretending has finally exhausted itself. I'm not excusing what he did. I'm explaining how we got here. The boy is broken. I broke him by being absent. His grandmother broke him by being too present with the wrong things. And now you're here, and maybe you can do what I couldn't. Big Jake understood something in that moment that shifted everything. He'd lost Melissa. This man was losing his son to a different kind of death, the death of character, the slow erosion of everything that makes a person worth knowing. Mr. Ashford, what happened to your wife? She was a nurse, pediatric oncology. She spent her life caring for dying children, and when she got sick herself, she refused aggressive treatment because she'd seen what it did. She died with dignity, surrounded by patients' families she'd helped over the years. Tyler saw all of it, watched her waste away. I think he's been angry ever since, and I wasn't there to help him process it. Jake's jaw worked. Rita had been a nurse too once. Vietnam-era patching up boys who were barely older than Tyler, watching too many of them die far from home. I'm going to teach your son who that woman is. We're going to help him understand what respect means, what consequences look like. And if he's willing to learn, we're going to give him a chance to make it right. Good. Robert Ashford's voice carried something like relief, like a man who'd been holding his breath for 7 years and could finally exhale. I'm 2 hours away. I'll drive there now. I'll clear my schedule permanently. But until I arrive, he's yours. Teach him what I couldn't. The line went dead. Tyler stood there abandoned by his father in a way that felt both like betrayal and like the first honest thing that had happened between them in years. Surrounded by 50 people who'd witnessed his cruelty and weren't impressed by his follower count or his trust fund or his ability to make strangers laugh at someone else's pain. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be powerless. For the first time, he was the prop in someone else's story, the content someone else was creating, the person who didn't get to control the narrative. It felt like drowning. Big Jake pulled out his own phone, his scarred hand steady. Show me the video your friend filmed. Tyler's voice came out small, defeated. I had to delete it all. Show me or I'll get it myself. Your friends are sitting right over there, and I promise they'll cooperate. Tyler's fingers moved mechanically, accessing his recently deleted folder, the digital graveyard of content that hadn't performed well or had been too cruel even for his audience. He pulled up the video, handed the phone over, couldn't watch. Jake took it and held it up, forcing Tyler to look. Watch it. Watch what you did. The footage was damning in ways Tyler had never considered when he was behind the camera instead of in front of it. Sarah's patient dignity as she wrote down every impossible specification. Tyler's escalating abuse, each iteration crueler than the last. Her trembling hands, her professional smile cracking like ice under pressure. Old Mike standing up, his voice carrying the weight of generations. That waitress deserves your respect. Tyler's sneer, the words he'd thought were witty in the moment. Mind your business, Grandpa. This is between me and the help. Sarah's tears forming the moment before everything broke. And then the actual moment of impact captured in high definition. Sarah's face crumbling, her soul visible in her eyes as she realized what had just happened. Tyler's triumphant laughter, the sound of someone who'd never learned that other people's pain was real. Tyler watched, and for the first time he saw it from outside his own narcissism. Saw a tired woman just trying to survive. Saw casual cruelty disguised as entertainment. Saw himself, and what he saw made him physically sick. He bent over, hands on his knees, and vomited onto the asphalt between two motorcycles. The bikers didn't move, didn't comment, just watched as 17 years of insulation from reality came up in waves. When Tyler could finally stand again, Jake pocketed the phone. Now you're going to hear some stories, and you're going to listen. One by one, the bikers spoke, not lectures, not sermons, just facts delivered with the kind of authority that comes from living through things that matter. A man named Robert stepped forward, first his Vietnam veteran cap faded from decades of sun. My mother was a waitress for 30 years, raised 4 kids on tips and minimum wage. She worked until her feet bled and her back gave out. Died at 62, worn out from a lifetime of being treated like she didn't matter. You just spit on my mother's memory. A woman named Christine, her leather vest decorated with patches from charity rides across 3 states. My sister was harassed at her job for 2 years. Boss customers, everyone thought they could treat her however they wanted because she needed the paycheck. She developed anxiety so bad she couldn't leave her house. Eventually couldn't work at all. Lives on disability now, 43 years old. You just did to that woman what was done to my sister. Bear stepped forward, his purple heart visible on a chain around his neck. My wife worked 3 jobs to put me through physical therapy when I got injured and couldn't ride. She sacrificed everything so I could walk again, so I could have a future. That woman in there is probably doing the same for her kids. You tried to take her dignity because you thought it would get you likes. Story after story, each one a reminder that Sarah wasn't nobody. She was somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, somebody's hero, somebody's everything. The invisible architecture that holds the world together, the people who show up every day and do the work that keeps civilization functioning, while people like Tyler treat them like they're disposable. Tyler stood in the center of the circle, tears running down his face. Not performative crying this time. Real ugly soul-breaking tears. The kind that come when you finally see yourself clearly and don't like what's there. I didn't, his voice cracked completely. I didn't think of her as a real person. I just saw content, views, likes, numbers going up. That's the problem. Jake's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. You stopped seeing people as people. You saw them as props in your show, as fuel for your validation, as things to be used and discarded. My mom, Tyler couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't get past the image of her in that hospital bed wasted from cancer, still trying to smile for him, even though every breath hurt. She'd been a nurse. She'd spent her life caring for people, treating everyone with respect regardless of who they were. She would be so ashamed of me. Big Jake stepped closer, his voice carrying a weight that made the morning air feel heavier. Son, I lost my daughter 2 years ago, suicide. You want to know why? Tyler looked up through his tears and something in Jake's face made him go very still. A boy at her college filmed her having a panic attack. She had PTSD from her cancer treatment, and sometimes she'd have episodes. This kid filmed it, posted it online with a commentary about how she was crazy, how she was a freak. Within 48 hours, my Melissa was a meme. Millions of people laughed at her worst moment. Jake's hands were steady, but his eyes held an ocean of grief that Tyler could barely comprehend. The humiliation was too much for her to bear. She took her own life. I found her body. I read her suicide note. She wrote that she couldn't live in a world where cruelty was entertainment, where suffering was content, where she was nothing but a prop in someone else's bid for fame. Tyler's knees buckled slightly. He'd never considered that his videos had consequences beyond the screen, that the people he humiliated went home afterward, carried that shame with them, maybe couldn't escape it. I swore at her funeral with my wife beside me and my entire chapter as witnesses that I would never stand silent when someone was being humiliated for entertainment, that I would intervene, no matter what, no matter who. Jake looked directly into Tyler's eyes. You gave me a purpose today, son. You reminded me why I made that promise. But I'm going to give you something too, a chance to be better than you were, a chance to make this right. The circle of bikers remained silent, witnessing, holding space for this moment of reckoning. Here's what happens next. You're going to go back in there and apologize to that woman. Not a fake apology, not an I'm sorry if you were offended apology, a real apology where you take full responsibility for what you did. Tyler nodded, unable to speak. Then you're going to open your banking app and you're going to transfer $10,000 to her. Right now, from your trust fund. We'll wait. 10,000, I can't just... Yes, you can. Jake's voice remained firm, unyielding as bedrock. You're wearing 3,000 on your body right now. You drive a car that costs 60,000. Your watch, even the fake one, represents money most people don't see in a year. You can afford it, and you will, because that's the price of your education today. Tyler understood that arguing was pointless. The circle around him wasn't a suggestion. It was gravity, natural law, the universe correcting an imbalance. You wanted to make her feel small. You're going to make her feel valued. You wanted to humiliate her. You're going to dignify her. That's how this works. Jake's voice softened slightly, just enough to let compassion in alongside the steel. But there's more. You're going to delete every social media account. You're going to volunteer at a homeless shelter and a women's crisis center 20 hours a week minimum. You're going to go to therapy twice a week. And you're going to spend every day for the next year trying to become someone your mother would be proud of. Tyler thought of his mother's face in those final weeks, the way she'd looked at him with so much hope, despite the pain, believing he'd become someone good, someone who made the world better instead of worse. And if I don't, the question came out smaller than intended. Then this video gets posted to every platform we can find. And we make sure everyone knows who you really are. Your choice. Tyler was silent for a long moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like atmospheric pressure. Then quietly the words came from somewhere deeper than performance. I'll do it. All of it. I want to do it. Why? Jake's question wasn't rhetorical. He needed to know if Tyler understood if something had actually changed or if this was just another act. Because you're right. Because my mom would be ashamed. Because that woman didn't deserve what I did. Because I don't want to be this person anymore. He looked around at the faces in the circle, weathered, strong, certain in their convictions. I'm tired of being empty, of chasing numbers that don't mean anything, of hurting people because I'm too broken to know how else to feel powerful. Big Jake studied him for a long moment, searching for truth, finding something that looked genuine enough to build on. All right, son, let's go make this right. When Tyler Ashford III walked back through the door of Chrome Valley Diner, he was a different person than the one who'd walked out 20 minutes earlier. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes red and swollen from crying, his hands trembling as he pushed open the door. The bell chimed, not like a warning this time, but like an announcement of reckoning, like the sound that plays when accounts come due. The diner was fuller now. Word had spread the way it always does in small communities, through text messages and phone calls, through the invisible network of people who care about each other and want to witness when justice finally arrives. Every single person had their phone out, pointed at Tyler as he entered. This time he wasn't controlling the narrative. He was living inside consequences he couldn't edit, delete, or spin. He was the content now, the prop, the person being watched and judged. Sarah had been brought back from the kitchen by Rita, who held her hand like a mother preparing her daughter for something important. Sarah's face was clean now, the spit wiped away with Melissa's handkerchief, but the emotional residue remained visible in her eyes. She stood near the counter, old Mike on one side, Martha on the other, the community creating a protective wall between her and the boy who tried to destroy her dignity. Tyler walked toward her slowly. Each step required courage he didn't know he possessed. The 50 bikers filed back in behind him, silent escorts ensuring he followed through their boots, marking time like a funeral march. The distance from the door to where Sarah stood was maybe 30 feet. It felt infinite. When he finally stood in front of her, his voice broke before he even began speaking. "Ma'am, I don't even know how to start." Sarah didn't speak, just looked at him with those tired eyes that had seen too much endured, too much carried too much weight for too many years. "What I did to you is unforgivable." The words tumbled out unrehearsed raw. There's no excuse. Not my age, not my upbringing, not anything. I treated you like you weren't human, and you are. You're someone's mother. You're someone who works harder in a day than I've probably worked in my entire life. You have dignity and strength that I can't even comprehend. His voice cracked the careful pronunciation of privilege, giving way to something more fundamental. "I spit on you because I thought it would be funny. Because I thought humiliating you would get me views and likes and make me feel powerful. But all it did was show everyone who I really am." The tears came freely now, unstoppable, genuine. "And I'm ashamed of that person. I'm so ashamed." Tyler's voice dropped to barely a whisper, the words meant only for Sarah even though everyone could hear. "My mom died when I was 10. She was a nurse. She spent her whole life taking care of people, helping people, treating everyone with respect, no matter who they were." Sarah's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in her armor, the first sign that she was seeing him as something other than the monster who'd spit on her. "She would be so disappointed in who I've become. I think I've been so angry for so long that I forgot how to be kind. I forgot how to see people as people instead of just content for my channel." He looked directly at her now, meeting her eyes despite every instinct screaming to look away. "But that's not your burden to carry. You didn't deserve any of what I did to you. None of it. And I know saying sorry isn't enough. Words are cheap when you've spent years using them to hurt people. But I'm asking you if you can find it in yourself, please forgive me." The diner was completely silent. Even the kitchen had gone quiet, Jose standing in the window with tears running down his face. This wasn't performative anymore. This was a soul breaking open, a boy becoming something closer to human, a moment of transformation witnessed by a community that understood the difference between performance and truth. Sarah looked at this child who'd caused her such pain and saw something she recognized: brokenness. She'd been broken by life in different ways, worn down by circumstance, ground to dust by a system that valued profit over people. But she'd never let it turn her cruel. Maybe she could show him there was another way. "I accept your apology." The simplicity of it, no lecture, no conditions, just grace, hit Tyler like a physical blow. His knees almost gave out. "But I need you to understand something." Sarah's voice gained strength, the dignity that Tyler had tried to destroy, reasserting itself like spring returning after winter. "I have 3 children. My daughter got into Stanford full academic scholarship, but there are still $32,000 in expenses I can't cover. I work 3 jobs, I sleep 4 hours a night, and every single day I make a choice." She paused, making sure he was listening, making sure he understood. "I choose to be kind, even when I'm exhausted, even when people treat me badly, even when the world feels unfair. Because that's what my children need to see. That's what this community needs. That's what makes us human." Her words carried the weight of 22 years behind a counter, 22 years of choosing grace over bitterness. I hope you've learned something today. I hope you become the person your mother would have wanted you to be. And I hope you remember that every person you meet, every single one, is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be kind. Always. Tyler nodded, unable to speak through the tears that wouldn't stop. Then he pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opened his banking app, entered Sarah's name, and the phone number Rita quietly provided. Transfer amount, $10,000 on. He turned the screen toward her so she could see it was real, that this wasn't another trick, another performance. His finger hovered over confirm for just a moment. This was more money than he'd ever given away, more than he'd spent on anything that wasn't for himself, and then he pressed it. Sarah stared at the phone at the number that represented more money than she'd seen in one place in her entire life. Her legs gave out, betrayed by exhaustion and shock and the sudden possibility that maybe things could be okay. She collapsed into the nearest chair, one hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. $10,000. Not enough to solve everything, the bills would still come, the exhaustion would still be there, but enough to breathe. Enough for Emma's first semester expenses. Enough to catch up on rent and utilities. Enough to feel like maybe the universe wasn't entirely indifferent to her struggle. The diner erupted. Applause, tears, people hugging each other like they'd witnessed something sacred, something that proved the world could still be good. Sometimes that justice could still happen, that ordinary people could still matter. Old Mike wiped his eyes with his napkin, not even trying to hide it. Martha openly sobbed, her nurse's training abandoned in favor of pure emotion. The Hendersons held each other tight, 42 years of marriage, giving them the wisdom to recognize a miracle when they saw one. In the corner booth, Big Jake nodded once satisfied. Rita smiled through her own tears, thinking of Melissa, hoping somehow her daughter knew that they'd kept their promise, that they'd stopped it from happening again. This was catharsis, collective and powerful, the kind that reminds people why community matters, why standing up for each other matters, why choosing to care is always worth it even when it's hard. Tyler stood there lighter somehow, despite having just given away $10,000 like he'd been carrying weight he didn't know was there and had finally set it down. The door opened again and a man in his early 50s walked in, tall, graying at the temples, wearing a business suit that looked rumpled from a 2-hour drive. The exhaustion on his face went deeper than physical tiredness. This was the fatigue of a man who'd been running from himself for years and had finally stopped. This was Tyler's father. Robert Ashford scanned the diner, found his son sitting at a booth with Big Jake and Rita. Tyler's eyes still red, his face blotchy. Father and son looked at each other for a long moment across the expanse of 7 years of absence. 7 years of choosing work over presence. 7 years of telling himself he was doing the right thing by providing money instead of time. Then Robert Ashford did something he hadn't done since Tyler's mother died. He pulled his son into a real embrace. Not a brief masculine pat on the back. Not a handshake disguised as affection. A real hug, the kind a father gives a son he thought he'd lost and just found again. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." Tyler's words came muffled against his father's shoulder, 17 years old again, small and broken and desperate for connection. I know you are." Robert held him for another moment, then released him and turned to Big Jake, extending his hand. "Robert Ashford, I owe you a debt I can never repay." Jake shook his hand, measuring the man, finding someone who understood failure and was trying to do better. "Jake Sullivan, just did what needed doing. You did what I should have done years ago." Robert sat down across from them, and Rita slid a cup of coffee in front of him without being asked. He nodded thanks, wrapped his hands around the warmth, and looked at his son with an expression that mixed regret and determination. "Tyler's going to live with me now, effective immediately. Your grandmother has had you long enough. It's time I actually raised my son instead of just paying for him." Tyler's eyes widened, hope and fear mixing. "But Dad, you're overseas half the time." "I resigned, already sent the email from the car. I've been chasing a career instead of raising my son, and that ends today." The words hung in the air like a vow, like the kind of promise that changes the trajectory of lives. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to finish your senior year at a different school, public school, not private. You're going to get a part-time job. You're going to volunteer 20 hours a week like these folks told you. You're going to therapy twice a week, and every penny you earn goes into a fund." Tyler listened, and for the first time in years, felt like his father was actually seeing him. "What fund?" "A fund to make restitution to everyone you've hurt with your content over the years. We're going to go through every video you ever posted, identify every person you humiliated, and you're going to reach out to each one with an apology and financial compensation." The enormity of it hit Tyler like a wave. "Dad, there are hundreds of videos. Then you'll be busy for a while. This is what accountability looks like, son. This is what it means to face consequences. And I should have taught you this years ago instead of being an ATM who occasionally flew home." Robert looked at Big Jake with something like desperation. "Mr. Sullivan, would your chapter be willing to mentor my son, not hand-holding, not making excuses for him, but showing him what real men look like, what honor and respect actually mean?" Big Jake considered for a long moment, looked at Tyler, who met his eyes with something that looked like genuine hope. "Code has 3 parts. Respect those who earn it, protect those who need it, and give second chances to those who want to change. He paused, let the weight of it settle. Your boy wants to change. I can see it. So yeah, we'll help. But he has to do the work. I will. Tyler's voice was stronger now, certain. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to be that person anymore. Good. First lesson starts Saturday, 6 a.m. We're doing a food bank run. Wear old clothes and bring work gloves. You are going to learn what actual hard work looks like. As father and son prepared to leave, Tyler stopped at the counter where Sarah stood with Martha and old Mike. He looked at her one more time, this woman whose dignity he'd tried to destroy, who'd shown him grace he didn't deserve. Ma'am, I meant what I said. I'm going to be better. I'm going to make my mom proud. And I'm going to make you proud too, I promise. Sarah studied him for a moment, really looked at him, seeing past the designer clothes and the privilege to the broken boy underneath, and then nodded. I believe you. Don't make me regret it. Within 2 hours of Tyler leaving the diner, the story had exploded across the internet like a match dropped in gasoline. At least a dozen customers had filmed various parts of what happened, and those videos were spreading faster than wildfire across every social media platform imaginable. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. The story was everywhere, multiplying, mutating, taking on a life of its own. Tyler's original video, the one where he'd planned to showcase Sarah's humiliation, had been deleted from his account within minutes of his apology. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots existed, re-uploads proliferated, and more importantly, the videos of his public apology of the biker's intervention of Sarah receiving the money, those were the ones going truly viral. By noon, hashtags were trending worldwide. Justice for Sarah Nash, Chrome Valley Diner, Hells Angels Heroes. The algorithms had found something that triggered every emotional center, simultaneously outrage, at injustice, satisfaction, at accountability, hope that good people still existed. Tyler's follower count became a spectator sport. 17 million at breakfast, 14 million by lunch, 11 million by dinner. The numbers fell like dominoes, like a stock market crash, like karma had finally learned to count. The comments on his old videos, hundreds of them, still accessible through archives and mirrors, became graveyards of regret. This is who you really are. Disgusting. I hope that waitress is okay. Shame on all of us for following you. The bikers showed more class in 10 minutes than you've shown in 17 years. People who'd laughed at his pranks were now excavating their own complicity, trying to distance themselves from content they'd consumed without questioning. The collective awakening was messy, uncomfortable, necessary. By evening, major news outlets had descended on the story like vultures on roadkill, except this time the feast felt righteous. CNN ran it with the headline, Hells Angels Defend Waitress from Abusive Teen. Fox News called it, Modern-Day Heroes Bikers Teach Respect Without Violence. Local stations sent crews to Chrome Valley Diner, interviewing customers who'd witnessed the event, filming the parking lot where the circle of justice had formed, turning a truck stop off Route 66 into a pilgrimage site for people who wanted to believe the world could still be good. Sarah found herself thrust into a spotlight she'd never wanted, never asked for, never imagined possible. News crews showed up at her apartment building. Her phone rang constantly with interview requests. Good Morning America, Ellen, Dr. Phil, local stations, national stations, podcasts, documentaries, everyone wanting a piece of the story, wanting to package her pain and redemption into digestible segments. She appeared on a few morning shows, uncomfortable in borrowed clothes that Rita had helped her pick out, trying to explain what had happened, while maintaining the dignity that had defined her through the entire ordeal. The makeup artist commented on how tired she looked, offered concealer for the dark circles under her eyes, didn't understand that those circles represented 22 years of exhaustion that couldn't be covered with cosmetics. On Good Morning America, the host leaned forward with practiced empathy. Sarah, how did you maintain your composure during Tyler's abuse? I was just trying to do my job. I have 3 children at home. I couldn't afford to lose my temper or my job. So I did what I've always done, I endured. And when he spit on you, Sarah's eyes filled with tears the first time she'd broken down on camera, the first time the armor had cracked in public. I felt like everything I'd worked for, all the dignity I'd tried to maintain, all the years of serving people with respect, it all meant nothing. Like I really was nobody. But you're not nobody. No, no, I'm not. Those bikers showed me that. My community showed me that. All these people donating, sharing my story, they showed me that I matter. We all matter. The interview went viral too, of course. Sarah's quiet strength, her refusal to perform victimhood or demand revenge, resonated with millions of people who saw themselves in her struggle. But with visibility came toxicity. Within days, the backlash began. Online trolls, the kind who exist solely to poison goodness because they can't stomach their own emptiness, descended with vicious attacks. The comments appeared like a plague, spreading across platforms, each one trying to outdo the last in cruelty. She's a gold digger, probably staged the whole thing for money. Playing the victim, I bet she was rude to him first and they edited it out. That kid's life is ruined over spit. Absolutely ridiculous overreaction. The bikers are thugs. They committed assault and intimidation. Lock them all up. Tyler's former friends, embarrassed by association and protective of their own privilege, tried to discredit the story. Devin posted a thread claiming Sarah had been rude from the start, that they'd felt unsafe, that the bikers had terrorized them. Marcus uploaded a carefully edited version of events that painted Tyler as the victim of a setup. Their parents hired PR firms, spun narratives, posted their side, which painted Tyler as a good kid having a bad day, Sarah as an opportunist, the bikers as criminals hiding behind charity work. None of it stuck. The original videos were too clear, too damning, too widely distributed, but it poisoned the well enough to create doubt in some corners, to give people who wanted to defend privilege an excuse to do so. Then the threats started. Real ones, specific ones, the kind that made Sarah's hands shake when she read them. Anonymous accounts posted her home address, her apartment building, Emma's school schedule, Marcus's doctor's office, Jenny's piano teacher's address. The messages came in floods, promising violence with the kind of specificity that suggested research planning, genuine intent. You deserve worse than spit, you manipulative bitch. Ruining a young man's life for money. We know where you live. Watch your back. Your kids go to Lincoln Elementary. It would be a shame if something happened during pickup. We know what medication your son takes. Easy enough to tamper with. Think about that. Someone spray-painted fraud across the diner's front window one night. The letters 3 feet tall, red paint dripping like blood. Jose found it when he arrived at 5 a.m. to start prep, called Sarah, before calling the police, his voice shaking with rage and fear. The phone at Chrome Valley rang constantly with threatening calls. People claiming to be lawyers, claiming to represent Tyler's family, claiming they'd sue the diner into bankruptcy. Others were less subtle, just breathing heavy on the line, then hanging up, then calling again. A group calling themselves men's rights activists declared Sarah an example of female victimhood culture destroying young men's lives, and Tyler a victim of male persecution by feminist mobs. They organized online planned protests, talked about making examples. Sarah called Big Jake at 2 a.m., her voice shaking with the kind of fear that mothers know, the kind that makes sleep impossible. I can't do this. I have children. Someone posted Emma's school schedule online. They know what time Marcus takes his inhaler. They're saying they'll tamper with it. I need to give the money back, all of it. I need this to stop. Jake's voice came through the phone, calm, steady, immovable as mountains. Nobody's touching you or your kids. Not now, not ever. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. The certainty in his voice was absolute, the kind that comes from having nothing left to lose, from having already buried a daughter and refusing to let it happen again. Within 2 hours, the Riverside chapter had organized a protection rotation with military precision. Schedules were drawn up, shifts, assigned responsibilities, delegated like they were planning an operation behind enemy lines. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 2 bikers at Chrome Valley Diner, rotating in 8-hour shifts. 2 more watching Sarah's apartment building from the parking lot across the street. 1 following the school bus that carried Marcus and Jenny, discreet but visible to anyone looking. Rita personally escorting Emma to and from school until the semester ended and she left for Stanford. They weren't menacing, didn't threaten anyone, didn't break any laws, just sat, visible and vigilant. Reading newspapers, drinking coffee, existing as a physical barrier between Sarah's family and anyone who might want to test their resolve. A clear message: Sarah Mitchell was under protection, permanently. Big Jake recorded a response video that became almost as viral as the original story. He sat on his motorcycle in the Chrome Valley parking lot, his crew visible behind him, forming a wall of leather and determination, and spoke directly to the camera with the kind of authority that doesn't need to raise its voice. To anyone thinking about threatening Sarah Mitchell or her family, understand this. You're not just threatening her. You're threatening all of us. He paused, let the weight of it settle. 50 of us were at that diner that day, but there are hundreds more in our extended family across 5 states. Thousands more who believe what we believe, that good people deserve protection, that working folks deserve respect, that bullies need to learn consequences. His eyes were steady, his voice calm, his message crystal clear. Touch her. You answer to us. All of us. This isn't a threat. Threats are conditional. This is a promise. Sarah is under our protection. Test that at your own risk. The video hit 17 million views in 3 days. The comments section became a monument to what people wish the world could be. This is what real men look like. 150,000 likes. I'd feel safer with these bikers than any police force. 98,000 likes. The code. Respect it. 76,000 likes, but it wasn't just the bikers who rallied. The community Sarah had served for 20 years came together in a show of solidarity that made her weep with gratitude. Local businesses put signs in their windows. We stand with Sarah. The hardware store, the bookshop, the grocery store, even the bank, all displaying the same message, all choosing sides publicly. Regular customers organized additional watch groups. Old Mike sat in the diner every day from open to close, his presence, a statement that you'd have to go through a 78-year-old veteran to get to Sarah. The Hendersons drove by her apartment twice daily, waving when they saw her, making sure everyone knew she was being watched over. Martha coordinated with hospital security to flag any suspicious activity, to keep an eye out for anyone asking questions about Sarah's kids, about their medical information, about anything that didn't feel right. Jose and the kitchen staff took turns walking Sarah to her car. After every shift, a rotating escort of line cooks and dishwashers who decided that protecting their own mattered more than clocking out on time. A petition supporting Sarah, demanding legal protection from harassment, gathered 15,000 signatures in a week. The local police chief, a regular at the diner, who always ordered the biscuits and gravy, personally assured Sarah that any threats would be investigated as hate crimes, that she had the full support of the department. Faced with overwhelming opposition, the trolls began to back down. The threats slowed, then stopped. The negative comments were drowned out by positive ones, buried under avalanches of support from people who had decided that Sarah's story mattered more than some strangers' need to feel powerful by tearing others down. The GoFundMe that Martha had started, modest goal of 20,000, thinking maybe a few hundred people would contribute, had become something else entirely. The numbers kept climbing, unstoppable, a tidal wave of solidarity from strangers who'd never met Sarah, but felt connected to her struggle. Within 24 hours, $180,000. Within a week, $247,000. The donations came from everywhere, every amount meaningful. $5 from a single mother in Ohio who wrote, "I've been Sarah, thank you for your dignity." $100 from a retired teacher in California for Emma's books. $500 from a veteran in Texas. Those bikers represent the best of us. $1,000 from an anonymous donor. In memory of my mother, who was a waitress for 40 years and died never owning a home. The comments section filled with stories that could fill volumes, testimonies from the invisible army of working people who saw themselves in Sarah's struggle. A server in Atlanta. "Last week, someone threw a drink in my face because their steak was overcooked. I cried in the walk-in freezer for 20 minutes. Sarah's story made me feel seen. Thank you." A reformed bully. "I was Tyler once. Not as bad, but I treated service workers like they were beneath me. This story made me face what I'd become. I'm going to do better." A granddaughter. "My grandmother raised 4 kids on waitress wages. She died never owning a home, never taking a vacation, never retiring. Sarah deserves every penny of this and more." The money was verified, transferred, real. Enough for Emma's entire 4 years at Stanford, with money left over for Marcus and Jenny's futures. Enough to catch up on every bill, to fix the wobbling ceiling fan, to buy Marcus an emergency inhaler for home and school, and Jose's car. enough to breathe without choosing between dignity and survival. Sarah cried when she saw the final total, cried in a way she hadn't let herself cry in 22 years, cried until Rita held her and promised that it was okay to accept help, that she'd earned this, that the world was finally paying a debt long overdue. 3 months passed. The media moved on to new stories, new outrages, new opportunities to package human suffering into digestible content. The death threats had stopped completely. The trolls had found new targets. The viral moment had passed into internet history, remembered by some, forgotten. By most, just another story in an endless feed. But for Sarah, life had found a new rhythm. She still worked at Chrome Valley Diner, but the weight on her shoulders was lighter. Now the mathematics of survival less brutal. Emma was enrolled at Stanford's schedule, set dorm assigned every expense covered by scholarship and donations. Marcus's asthma was under control. She could afford his medication without choosing between that and groceries, could buy him the name brand inhaler that worked better. Jenny had new school supplies, clothes that actually fit piano lessons she'd always wanted, but Sarah had never been able to afford. The bikers still came, every other Tuesday, still sat in the corner booth, still ordered the same meals and tipped better than anyone. And Sarah still served them with the same warmth, the same efficiency, the same dignity she'd always possessed. Except now, when she looked at Big Jake and Rita and the crew, she didn't just see customers. She saw family. She saw the people who'd stood up when it mattered, who'd turned the worst day of her life into a doorway to something better. One Thursday morning in late August, Sarah's phone rang. Big Jake's name on the screen. "Can you come to the diner tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock? It's important." Sarah's heart jumped, old instincts kicking in. Is everything okay? Is someone hurt? Everything's better than okay, trust me. Just be there. She could hear the smile in his voice, something underneath it that sounded like excitement, like a secret too good to keep much longer. Jake, what's going on? You'll see. Oh, and Sarah wears something nice. This is a special occasion. He hung up before she could ask more questions, leaving her staring at her phone with confusion mixing with curiosity, wondering what could possibly require nice clothes at a truck stop diner. Sarah arrived at Chrome Valley at 9:55 the next morning, 5 minutes early from habit from 22 years of always showing up on time because that's what you did when you needed the car more than the car needed you. But something was different. The parking lot was packed with motorcycles, at least 60 of them, maybe more, chrome gleaming in the morning sun like a river of metal. And mixed between them were cars she recognized: old Mike's pickup truck, Martha's sedan, the Henderson's SUV, Jose's van, vehicles belonging to regulars and community members, and people she'd served for years. The entire town seemed to be here. Her heart started racing, old fears resurfacing. Had something happened? Was someone sick? Had the trolls come back? She walked faster toward the entrance, anxiety building with each step. When she pushed through the door, the bell chiming above her head like an announcement, she stopped dead in her tracks. The diner was packed beyond capacity. Standing room only, every booth filled, people lining the walls shoulder to shoulder. And in the center of it all stood Big Jake and Rita, both wearing the biggest smiles Sarah had ever seen on faces that had known so much grief. Behind them, a large sheet covered something on the wall. Balloons, actual balloons in chrome and red, were tied to every table. A banner stretched across the kitchen window. Congratulations, Sarah. What's going on? Her voice came out small, uncertain, overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of whatever this was. Big Jake's voice boomed with joy that filled the entire space. Sarah Mitchell, come here. She walked forward on legs that threatened to give out the crowd, parting to let her through like she was royalty, like she mattered in a way she'd never quite believed was possible. When she reached Jake, he put his massive hands gently on her shoulders, and she could see moisture in his eyes. 3 months ago, we watched something in this diner that reminded every single person in this room what matters in life. The crowd murmured agreement, heads nodding, people wiping their eyes. We watched you maintain your dignity in the face of cruelty. We watched you show grace when you could have shown anger. We watched you be exactly the kind of person this world needs more of. And we decided that day that we were going to do something about it. Sarah's eyes began filling with tears, her hands trembling. Rita stepped forward with a manila envelope, the same kind they'd given her 3 months ago, except this one felt heavier, more significant, like it contained something that would change everything. Sarah, the owner of this diner, Mr. Patterson, he's been wanting to retire for 2 years. Couldn't find the right buyer, someone who would keep the heart of this place alive, who understood that it's not just about the food. She paused, making sure Sarah was listening, making sure this moment landed the way it deserved. So we bought it, all of us. The chapter pooled resources, the community donated, local businesses contributed, $200,000 total. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, her mind unable to process the words, unable to make them mean what they seemed to mean. We bought the diner, but not for us, for you, Sarah. Jake took the envelope from Rita and placed it in Sarah's trembling hands, like he was passing her something sacred. As of this morning, you are the owner and operator of this establishment. It's yours. The deed, the business license, everything. All legal, all official, all yours. The words didn't make sense. Owner, her, Sarah Mitchell, who'd been a waitress her entire adult life, who'd never owned anything except a 17-year-old Honda and a mountain of debt that was finally paid off. Owner. I can't, this isn't real. It's real. Rita pressed the envelope firmly into her hands, wouldn't let her refuse it. Inside are the deed, the business license, equipment, manifests everything. It's yours. But that's not all. Jake gestured around the diner, and for the first time Sarah noticed the changes. The booths had been reupholstered in fresh red vinyl that gleamed like new. The chrome fixtures were polished to perfection, reflecting light like mirrors. The floor had been refinished, the black and white tiles looking brand new. Through the kitchen window, she could see new equipment, commercial refrigerators, a modern grill, dishwashers that looked like they belonged in a restaurant downtown. Everything looked both exactly the same and completely transformed, like the diner had been sleeping and had finally woken up. We spent the last 3 months renovating. New equipment, structural repairs, everything this place needed to last another 50 years. Work nights after you left, weekends when you were off. You never noticed because we made sure to clean up before your shifts. Sarah's knees buckled. Rita caught her, held her up, wouldn't let her fall. And we changed the name. Jake walked to the wall and pulled the sheet off with the ceremony of someone unveiling a monument. Behind it was a beautiful new sign, hand-carved wood, with elegant lettering that must have cost thousands, professional quality, that spoke of care and craftsmanship and love. Sarah's Second Chance Cafe. Below it, smaller text and script, where dignity is served daily. Sarah's composure, which had held through Tyler's abuse, through the humiliation, through the threats and the viral storm, and 3 months of slowly rebuilding her life, shattered completely. She broke down in a way that was almost frightening in its intensity, her whole body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from her very soul. 22 years of exhaustion. 22 years of choosing between bills and food, between her children's needs and her own, between dreams and survival. 22 years of being invisible, of being taken for granted, of wondering if any of it mattered. All of it came pouring out in that moment, every bit of pain and fear and desperate hope, finding release in tears that wouldn't stop, couldn't stop, didn't need to stop anymore. Rita held her while the bikers approached one by one, not crowding her, but placing hands on her shoulders, murmuring words of encouragement, surrounding her with protection and love, and the promise that she was family, now that they would never let her struggle alone again. These men and women who looked so intimidating to outsiders were gentle as they created a circle of safety around Sarah, their rough hands and scarred faces radiating nothing but kindness. When Sarah could finally breathe again, when the sobs had subsided to shaky breaths, Rita helped her to a chair and knelt beside her like a supplicant before a queen. "There's one more thing, honey." Jake pulled out a document, official-looking papers with legal seals and signatures. "The business is structured as a profit-sharing model. You keep 70% of all profits. This is your livelihood, your security. The other 30% goes into a fund." Sarah's voice came out hoarse from crying. "What fund?" "A scholarship fund for children of service workers who want to go to college. Kids like Emma. Kids whose parents work themselves to exhaustion trying to give them a better life. Kids who deserve a chance but can't afford one." Jake's voice grew thick with emotion, and Rita took his hand, squeezed it, gave him strength. "We're calling it the Melissa Sullivan Memorial Scholarship, after my daughter." Sarah looked up at Jake and saw the pain and pride mixed in his eyes, saw a father who'd turned his greatest loss into something that would help others, who'd transformed grief into grace. This is what Melissa would have wanted, to turn something painful into something beautiful. To help people like you, good people who deserve better than what the world has given them. Rita added softly, her voice breaking just slightly. Every student we help is Melissa's dream living on. Every scholarship is her saying that cruelty didn't win, that her life mattered, that good can come from even the worst pain. Old Mike stood up from his seat at the counter, coffee cup raised high in a trembling hand. To Sarah Mitchell, best damn waitress in the state, and an even better person. The entire diner raised glasses, coffee cups, water bottles in a toast that thundered like applause. To Sarah, in the sound was deafening, joyful, pure, the sound of community choosing to celebrate one of their own, choosing to prove that good people don't finish. Last, they just need others to recognize their worth. Sarah looked around at all these faces through her tears. Old Mike crying openly at 78 years old and not caring who saw. Martha with her hands clasped over her heart. The Hendersons holding each other after 42 years of marriage and still finding new reasons to believe in love. Jose grinning so wide his face might split, proud of the woman who'd been slipping him 20s for years. And 50 bikers, these intimidating men and women in leather, all smiling with genuine joy at seeing Sarah receive what she'd always deserved. Sarah stood on shaking legs, Rita helping steady her. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll let us love you the way you've loved this community. Sarah looked around, tears still streaming, and found her voice somewhere beneath the overwhelming gratitude. For 22 years I've served you, all of you, and I never expected anything in return except maybe a thank you and a decent tip. Quiet laughter rippled through the crowd. But you've given me so much more than that. You've given me family. You've given me purpose. And now, her voice broke, but she pushed through. Now you've given me a future. I don't deserve this. Yes, you do. Jake's voice was firm, certain, allowing no argument. You've earned every bit of it. Now promise us something. Anything. Promise us you'll accept help when it's offered. Promise us you'll stop working yourself to death. Promise us you'll build something beautiful here. He paused, his voice softening. And promise us you'll remember that you matter. You've always mattered. Sarah could only nod, too overcome to speak, but the nod was a vow, a promise, a commitment to believe that maybe she was worth the kindness being offered. The celebration continued for hours. People shared stories of Sarah's small kindnesses over the years, paying for a homeless veteran's meal, remembering every regular's order, and their kids' names, always making people feel seen even on her worst days. Local news crews arrived, filmed the news sign, interviewed Sarah, who was still too emotional to be coherent, captured the community celebration for the evening broadcast. But this time the story wasn't about humiliation or injustice. It was about redemption, about community, about what happens when good people decide that goodness should be rewarded instead of exploited. As the celebration began to wind down, a young waitress, maybe 19, new to the profession, exhaustion already visible in her eyes, approached Sarah nervously. Ms. Mitchell, I just started working at the diner down on Route 9. My manager, he's not very nice. And I was wondering if maybe you had any advice about how to handle difficult customers, difficult situations. Sarah looked at this girl and saw herself at 19 trying to survive in a world that often felt cruel, trying to maintain dignity, when everything seemed designed to strip it away. She put a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. Come by Monday morning before the breakfast rush. I'll teach you everything I know, and I'll make sure you understand something important. What's that? That you matter. No matter what anyone says, no matter how they treat you, you matter. The girl's eyes filled with grateful tears, and Sarah understood that this was it. This was the legacy. Not just a diner or a scholarship fund, but a reminder that dignity and respect and kindness could change the world one person at a time. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the same parking lot on another May morning, watching the sun hit the hand-carved sign just right. Sarah's Second Chance Cafe. 365 days since the worst morning of her life had become the beginning of something she still couldn't quite believe was real. Her diner. The thought still felt surreal, still made her shake her head in wonder. The business had thrived beyond her wildest dreams. Revenue up 40%, staff retention at 100%, unheard of in an industry where people usually burned out and quit within months. Customer satisfaction through the roof. The scholarship fund had accumulated $127,000. She'd raised wages for all staff, added health insurance and paid sick leave, created a training program for young workers. The community board by the entrance listed local job postings, support services, resources for people struggling. Sarah unlocked the door at 5:30 a.m. Old habits die hard and the smell of coffee already brewing greeted her. Jose still got there earlier, still refused to let her be the first one in, still slipped her homemade tamales his wife made, still called her boss, even though she'd asked him not to. Her phone chimed at 7:15. FaceTime from Emma. Morning, Mom. Emma's face filled the screen, Stanford dorm room visible behind her engineering textbooks, stacked high, the future she was building visible in every detail. Baby girl, you look tired. Mother instinct never sleeps. Finals week, but I'm good. Professor Richardson asked me to TA for his intro course next semester. Pride bloomed in Sarah's chest like sunrise. That's wonderful, honey. How's the diner? Busy, good. We're celebrating the 1-year anniversary tonight. Big Jake and the chapter are doing a charity ride ending here. It's going to be beautiful. Emma's expression grew serious. Mom, do you ever think about that day about Tyler? Sarah was quiet for a moment, honest with her daughter, the way she tried to be honest with herself. Every day, not with anger anymore, but I think about how the worst thing that ever happened to me led to the best things, about how sometimes you have to break before you can be put back together stronger. Do you forgive him? I do, but more than that, I'm grateful. If that awful thing hadn't happened, I'd still be drowning. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. Tyler Ashford was serving breakfast at a homeless shelter in downtown Los Angeles when the documentary crew arrived. No designer clothes, no expensive accessories, just worn jeans and a Habitat for Humanity t-shirt, functional clothes for actual work. He moved efficiently between tables, his interactions respectful, genuine, transformed. The director of the shelter watched him with approval that had been earned over months of consistent effort. In the interview, Tyler looked directly at the camera with no performance, just honesty. I'm not the same person. That sounds like something people say to get forgiveness, but I mean it literally. The kid who spit on Sarah Mitchell, I don't recognize him anymore. He'd quit social media completely, given up his phone for 6 months, learned to see the world instead of seeing content. Woke up at 5 a.m., volunteered until 9, attended community college studying social work, worked part-time as a dishwasher, therapy twice a week, Saturdays with the Riverside chapter on charity rides. I'm also working on the restitution project. I posted 327 videos over 3 years. We've identified 198 individuals I humiliated. So far, I've reached out to 171 of them. Most didn't want to talk to him. Some cursed him out, he deserved that. But some let him apologize. Some accepted his offer of financial amends. A few had even forgiven him. I visit Sarah's diner once a month. First Saturday, I bus tables for free. She doesn't have to let me, but she does. She says everyone deserves a chance to make things right. At 6 a.m. on a Saturday, Tyler rode with Big Jake and the crew to the same children's hospital they'd visited the day of the Chrome Valley incident, helped unload toys and donations. Watched Jake and the others transform into gentle giants in the pediatric ward. Afterwards, sitting on their bikes in the parking lot, Jake asked how he was holding up. Some days are hard. I think about who I was and I feel ashamed. But you told me that guilt is useless unless it leads to change. So I keep changing. Jake nodded approval. Your mother would be proud. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, still not used to hearing that, might never be used to it. You think so? I know so. Melissa would be proud too. You're doing the work. That's what matters. That evening, Sarah's Second Chance Cafe was transformed for the first scholarship ceremony. 3 recipients, each receiving $15,000 for their first year of college. Sarah stood at the microphone, more comfortable now in the spotlight, but still humble, still surprised anyone wanted to hear what she had to say. A year ago, I was serving coffee and trying to survive. I never imagined I'd be standing here giving away scholarships, running my own business, living a life I didn't think was possible for someone like me. She looked at the 3 students whose futures were about to change. But that's the thing about second chances. They don't just change you, they ripple outward. They change families, communities, the world. Big Jake stepped up beside her, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. We have an announcement. The Riverside chapter, along with 10 other motorcycle clubs across California, are expanding the Melissa Sullivan Memorial Scholarship. Next year, 15 scholarships. Year after that, 30. Our goal is 100 annually within 5 years. Rita stepped up holding a framed photo of Melissa, beautiful young, full of promise that had been stolen too soon. My daughter would have been 22 this year. She wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to help people. This scholarship is her legacy. Every student we help is Melissa's dream living on. There wasn't a dry eye in the diner. The movement spread. Other businesses in Chrome Valley followed Sarah's model, raised wages, added profit sharing, implemented employee health care, started funds for at-risk youth. The economics of compassion proved viable, profitable, sustainable. Media coverage evolved from feel-good story to serious economic analysis. Harvard Business Review, 60 Minutes, Forbes. Sarah became an unlikely spokesperson for worker dignity, giving talks at conferences and universities, always uncomfortable in the spotlight, but committed to the message. I'm not an economist. I'm just a mom who worked 3 jobs and knows what it feels like to choose between dignity and survival. No one should have to make that choice. Ever. Politicians tried to co-opt her story. She refused them all. I'm not left or right. I'm a person who believes in treating people with respect. If that's political, we're all in trouble. Old Mike wrote an editorial for the local newspaper that went viral, a voice of his generation embracing change. What a waitress taught an old trucker about America. Sarah's children thrived. Emma started the Dignity Project at Stanford, fighting online humiliations, supporting service workers, promoting restorative justice. Marcus created a YouTube channel featuring real conversations instead of pranks. Jenny wrote poetry about dignity and humanity that won state competitions. The tide was shifting, slowly but shifting. Late one night after everyone had gone home, Sarah stood alone in the diner cleaning tables from habit. Big Jake walked back in, claimed he'd forgotten his bandana. You did it, Sarah. You built something real. We did it. I couldn't have done this without you. Without everyone. That's the point. We're stronger together. They worked in comfortable silence until the door opened again. A young woman walked in, maybe 22, exhausted, clearly, a waitress from another establishment, feet obviously hurting. I'm sorry, I know you're closed, but I saw the lights and I heard about this place, about you. I'm a waitress at the Denny's on Route 9, and my manager, he makes me feel like I'm nothing. Sarah and Jake exchanged a look, the circle completing itself. Sarah walked to the door, flipped the closed sign to open. Come in, honey. Sit down. Let me get you some coffee. I can't pay. It's on the house. Always is for family. The girl sat, tears already forming. Sarah poured coffee. Jake sat across from her, a protective presence. What's your name? Amy. Well, Amy, you came to the right place. Let me tell you a story about second chances. The sign glowed in the window. Sarah's Second Chance Cafe, where dignity is served daily. And somewhere in the universe, in whatever place holds the souls of those who've passed, Melissa Sullivan smiled.